Hello there, and no matter who you are or where you are in your life journey, know that you are welcome in this place. If you are looking to nurture a progressive faith and you find this video helpful, please feel free to like and subscribe, or share this video with anyone you feel called to. Our reading for today comes from Matthew 25, verses 1 through 13. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, "Look, here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all the bridesmaids got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise replied, "No, there will not be enough for you and for us. You had better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves." And while they went to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the other bridesmaids came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open to us." But he replied, "Truly, I tell you, I do not know you. Keep away, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour." Hello, sisters and brothers. Welcome to another weekly meditation. And this week we are talking about Matthew 25. And we're going to talk about the parable about the 10 bridesmaids. This is a parable that really does reflect the Gospel of Matthew. It continues that message that Matthew often throws at us about how we as Christians need to be ready and prepare to follow in Jesus' footsteps. Otherwise, we may find ourselves missing out on a lot of the good things and the good opportunities that Christ can bring to our lives. And so this story really does focus around preparedness, but it also talks a little bit about wisdom and the way in which we gain wisdom within our lives. And I think that those are both two things that are worth chatting about. So this passage, parable, it focuses in on these 10 bridesmaids. It tells us that half of them are foolish, half of them are wise, because they're preparing to be an escort to a bridegroom as he is heading to his wedding. And they have lamps with them in which they can light the way for him. And half of them have brought extra flasks of oil, the other half have not. The bridegroom takes a bit longer than they expect for him to show up. They fall asleep, they wake up, and half of their lamps or all their lamps are going out. But those who came prepared just put more oil in their lamps and they're good to go. The others, however, had to go off and find more oil. While they were away, they missed the party. And I think that this passage, I would really hesitate to say it's about exclusion, because we do need to keep in mind, especially in this passage, being chosen as a bridesmaid at one of these weddings would have been an honor. You would have been selected from members of your community, elevated above them. These are folks who are special. In particular, they were asked to be at this party. But even though they were special, even though they were asked to be at the party, it didn't excuse them from being foolish or being unprepared. And I think that what Matthew is trying to communicate to us who are following Christ is, one, it kind of continues the passage of the servants who were unprepared, in that we're all invited to this party that Christ has going on. But two, if we're not willing to take that commitment, that invitation seriously, then we very well could end up missing out on that party. I think there is another thing that we can focus in on here, and that is the idea of wisdom as opposed to foolishness. And we have a lot of passages from the Wisdom of Solomon this week, and one in particular speaks to what it is that gives us wisdom. And in particular, the passage tells us that the start of wisdom is seeking out instruction. And I think that speaks a little bit to what happened here with these bridesmaids in the passage we get from Matthew. And what I mean by that is these 5 bridesmaids who missed the party, they made a mistake. But I don't know if I would say that just because they missed out on this party, the story ends there. Very often, we as followers of Christ make mistakes, but it is by learning from our mistakes that often we are able to grow and in the future avoid those mistakes from happening again. An important element of this parable that Jesus tells is that this is taking place after their second day in Jerusalem. They're on top of the Mount of Olives. Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he is telling them this story as an instruction because he knew he was going to die. He knew that his disciples needed to be prepared for what was ahead of them, and he wanted them to be ready when that moment came. So we know with the benefit of hindsight that Jesus' disciples were not ready for his eventual conviction, execution, death, and resurrection. Judas betrayed him. Peter denounced him. The rest went into hiding. The folks who stuck with him were basically their moms, the closest female followers that Jesus had. Those 4 being Mary, Jesus' mom, Mary, mother of Jesus, Mary, the mother of the sons of Zebedee, which would be James and John, Mary Magdalene, and Mary of Cleophas. There's also another person there, Salome, who was a sister to one of those Marys, so there are actually 5 people there, 4 of them being Marys, and they were the first apostles. They were the first people to witnessed the good news of Jesus' resurrection. And Mary Magdalene was the first person to become an apostle by going out and telling the other disciples what happened and instructing them about what she had seen and learned. The other disciples eventually were able to recognize their mistake. They received that instruction and they became apostles themselves. And in turn, they went out and they instructed other people. And through that instruction, Christians keep that message of love alive. But often in order to do that, we have to recognize the mistakes that we've made. In order to avoid the foolishness that we see within this parable from Matthew, it's good for us to be open to the mistakes that we make within life, be that failing to recognize the resurrection of Christ or failing to bring oil to a wedding. Just because we mess up once doesn't mean that we are locked out of the party forever. It doesn't mean that there won't be other parties. It doesn't mean that there won't be other opportunities to live into the love of Jesus Christ. However, this is where Matthew's message of being prepared comes into play. If we're not ready to learn from our mistakes, if we're unwilling to accept that instruction, then we're probably going to find ourselves locked out of the party until we can get over ourselves, no matter how long that may take. If we look at the war that's happening between Israel and Hamas, when we see the way in which Hamas is willing to allow the death of thousands of Palestinians, and we see how Israel is willing to kill thousands of Palestinians, when we see the way in which Hamas attacked Israel in order to get this cycle of carnage rolling, and how that reflects the way in which empires and powers have behaved in that area of the world for centuries upon centuries, it's very easy for us to see in this instance how we as human beings refuse to learn from our mistakes. Only a couple decades after Jesus was killed and resurrected, Rome came and completely destroyed all of Jerusalem because of a revolt. The death toll was absolutely atrocious on a much larger scale than anything that the people of Israel had ever seen, and it scattered the people of Israel across the world. It is unfortunate that we who follow in the tradition of Abraham are unable to learn from our own history and continue to repeat the mistakes that we have made over and over and over again all these years, and to harm our sisters and brothers. We are also entering into the cold months here in Vermont, and we should be asking ourselves, what is it that we need to be doing in order to enter that banquet of God's love here in our own lives? How are we going to help those who are stuck out in the streets? How are we going to help those who don't have enough money to buy fuel to keep their house warm, or to repair their car so that they can continue to work when the roads get rough? How are we going to be there to prepare our sisters and brothers who are struggling in ways that we're not aware of here in church? How do we prepare ourselves for that banquet of Christ where all people are loved equally, fairly, and justly? I think that we need to be asking ourselves, how much of our not being ready is that we haven't learned those lessons yet? And how much of our being unprepared results from our unwillingness to learn? Because until we're able to learn those important lessons that will allow us into that banquet of Christ's love, the doors will be shut to us. But those doors don't need to be shut forever. Even if we don't get it, we can learn. That instruction is out there. We just need to be willing to embrace it. Amen.